All right, class, let's jump in with our first reading. This week we're looking at two of the greatest thinkers in the history of Western thought, the father of modern philosophy and the father of modern science. Father of modern science, of course, being Francis Bacon, and then the father of modern philosophy, Rene Descartes. So let's talk about Descartes in this lecture, or in this talk. So you're going to be reading a section out of Allen's book where Descartes covers really two of the big things that he's famous for. There's a third thing that he's famous for, but two of them are covered in the reading that you're going to be looking at here this week. One is an epistemological issue. You'll probably remember from PHI 1100, Faith, Reason, the Christian Mind, or Intro to Philosophy, depending on when you took it, we renamed it. You'll probably remember that epistemology is the study of knowledge, where we're dealing with questions about whether or not we know certain things, where knowledge comes from, whether or not we can have certainty, all of those types of things. Well, Descartes is dealing with epistemology in the reading that you're going to be looking at here this week, specifically the epistemological question of certainty. Okay, I'll come back to that in a second. The other thing he's going to be looking at in the reading you're looking at this week is the issue of God, whether or not God exists. And so he's going to bring up both of those things and tie them together. Okay, so what I want to do here in this little video is just give you an orientation on what Descartes is doing so that you can understand what you're reading. Okay, now to do that, we have to start with a basic question. You and I claim to know a lot of stuff, but how exactly do you know what you know? And more importantly, do you have any certainty whatsoever about it? That's the kind of question that Descartes is looking at or trying to answer in the work that you're about to read. And I think you could certainly understand why those questions are important. I mean, we could be wrong about any number of things. We could be wrong about all kinds of things that we think we have certainty about. And so we need to think about these types of questions. So here's the background. Descartes comes in the 17th century. There's a lot of things that have happened. Number one, there has been a decline of Christianity's confidence in the church. Catholicism reigned for hundreds and hundreds of years. But if you'll remember from your church history, in the century right before this, Protestant Reformation has taken place, where if anything has happened at all, the church has been called into question. And now there's a little bit of lack of confidence about the authority, the epistemic authority of the church. And so that's one big issue. There's also been the discovery by Copernicus and Galileo that the earth is not the center of the universe. And while that might not seem like a significant thing, it's actually pretty significant at this point in history, epistemologically speaking, because to you and I, as we look at the world, it sure seems like the earth is sitting still, and it sure seems like the sun and the moon and the stars and everything are going around it. And that's what our basic senses say to us. And yet what Copernicus and Galileo show us is that our basic senses on things that seem to be rather obvious to us in those senses, that they're wrong sometimes. And so there's now not only a theological question having to do with the epistemic authority of the church, there's now also an empirical type of question about whether or not you and I can trust our senses at all. And so all this breeds uncertainty. Descartes looking at all of those things, and he's also looking at the history of philosophy, and he notices in that history there's tons and tons of debate and disagreement, and there's no consensus. And so there you have it. Those are the background factors. Descartes sees the lack of certainty in the authority of the church. He sees a lack of certainty in our senses and our senses' ability to get it right. And then he also sees the uncertainty in philosophy. And so with all of that, philosophy now in the 17th century starts to raise these epistemic questions in a much more significant way than they had before. It's not to say that the epistemological questions weren't on the table before, but now in the 17th century, with those types of background issues, epistemology comes to be a huge issue. And so Descartes wants to know, just like probably most of us would want to know in that situation, how do we know what we know? And that's what's motivating him. Now, with that, Descartes recognizes that it was very possible that he was wrong in everything that he believed. He'd certainly been wrong about things before, and I've been wrong, and you've been wrong. And so he says, well, hey, look, if I've been wrong in these other cases, how do I know that I'm right anytime? I could be wrong or deceived in any number of things that I believe. Furthermore, he said it's possible, and he doesn't think that this thing really exists, But he says it's at least logically possible that this thing called a malignant demon, the evil demon, exists. And this demon does nothing but deceive you and I in everything that we believe. And so it's possible that that demon exists. So if that's the case, how do we know that we're not just deceived all the time about everything? How do we know that our perceptions of the world line up with the way the world really is? We believe that it's sunny outside or rainy outside, but how do we know it's really that way? I could be wrong about those things. You could be wrong about those things. Those are the types of questions, and those are very serious philosophical, epistemological questions. I think we could all understand that. So Descartes is going to try to solve those kinds of problems. All right. Now, to do that, he builds on his doubt. Remember, I said it's possible we could be wrong about everything, right? So Descartes says, if it's possible to doubt it, then it should be doubted. And this is referred to as his systematic doubt, his method of systematic doubt, right? So basically, if it's possible to doubt, it should be doubted. And what I will do now, Descartes says, is I will doubt everything that could possibly be doubted until I find that one clear and distinct idea, so clear and distinct that it cannot be doubted. It's not even possible for me to doubt. And so that's what he's going to do. That's his method. You need to understand that. Descartes has a method. His method is systematic doubt. Doubt everything possible that can be doubted until you find and discover. You're using this method basically to find and discover the one thing that cannot be doubted. And so he begins to doubt. I can doubt the sun, I can doubt the stars, I can doubt the moon, I can doubt your existence. I mean, you all could be a figment of my imagination. I don't know that you're real, all these physical things in the world. And I could doubt all those things, and heck, for that matter, if I can doubt all those physical things, I could doubt even my own body. If I can doubt my own body, I could probably doubt my own existence. And if I can doubt my own existence, then maybe I don't even exist. It seems like that could be possible. Then Descartes says, but now wait a minute. Something's wrong there. I can doubt my body's existence, but I cannot doubt my existence. Because for me to doubt my existence, I must exist to doubt it. Doubting is a form of thinking. And if I'm doubting, I'm thinking. And if I'm thinking, I exist to think. And so here comes the most famous statement in all of philosophy. Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Descartes thinks he's found that one thing now that is clear and distinct. While everything else can be doubted, this thing can't be doubted. Namely, that he is thinking and therefore he exists. And Descartes thinks on that foundation right there, this one idea that is clear and distinct, he can then build his entire epistemological system until it encompasses everything that we believe, including things like being able to trust your senses again. It looks like the sun is shining, it is shining. I can have confidence in my senses. And he thinks he can build all of that off of that basic idea at the bottom. Now, this is sometimes referred to as classical foundationalism or foundationalism, where we find these ideas that are clear and distinct, and we build our system on top of it. And that's where really this comes from. Descartes and others like him that did this type of stuff. Now with this, Descartes launches modern philosophy because modern epistemology flows out of this. All of the rationalist philosophers are going to do similar types of things. They're going to argue from their reason to starting points and build from there. So rationalism is going to come out of this. The empirical philosophers are going to reject this and build systems themselves out of this. And so modern epistemology sort of is born right here, and Descartes gives rise to it. And this is one of the major reasons we call him the father of modern philosophy. Now, there's a couple other things that come out of that as well. One is his ideas for God. In short, I'll just summarize this very quickly. Descartes will then move on in building that system to make arguments for God's existence. And I should note, Descartes is not doing that for apologetic reasons. In other words, he's not making his arguments for God's existence for the same reasons that most people today do that. Most people today do that because they're trying to do apologetics, defend the faith, make a case for the faith so that people will believe. Descartes is not doing that. Descartes is making a case for God to ensure the integrity of his epistemological system. If he can get God into the equation as the one who can sort of trump the malignant demon, then this is a way that we can now have certainty as well. So he's going to make a case for God's existence in this as well. There's one other thing. Those are the two things, by the way, the epistemology and the argument for God's existence. Those are going to pop up in the reading that you're about to read. There's one other major thing that Descartes is known for, and I think this one sort of comes about unintentionally maybe. At least it's not directly the thing he's trying to get at when he does his epistemological work and uses methodological skepticism and all that stuff. It's a mind-body problem issue. So there's an ontological issue that comes out of Descartes as well. So go back to what I said, he can doubt all this stuff, and he can doubt the stars and the moon, and he can doubt the chairs, and he can doubt you, and he can doubt me, and he can doubt anything physical, and for that matter, he can doubt his own physical body. But remember, he came to the conclusion that he could not doubt his own existence. Now, wait a minute, right there, I want you to see that. His body was the kind of thing that could be doubted, right? And yet he himself was the kind of thing that could not be doubted, all right? So what that tells you then, if bodies, physical bodies that we're in are the kinds of things that can be doubted, and persons are the kind of things that can't be doubted, then that would tell us that bodies and souls are fundamentally different kinds of things, right? So what you get is a mind-body dualism. This is sometimes referred to as substance dualism. This is going to come out of that. Bodies and souls are fundamentally different types of substances. They're fundamentally different types of things. And therefore, we have body-soul dualism. Okay? Now, that itself is not new. What's newish and unique here is the way that Descartes describes that. Because if, in fact, these are radically distinct things like that, one's material, one's non-material, then how do they interact with each other? How is it that a mind, which is immaterial, has no mass and extension, can interact with a body that is physical, having mass and extension? This is the mind-body problem, and it has been a menacing philosophical problem since Descartes, and there's been a whole history behind that we don't have time to uncover in this little video. So anyway, that's what you're going to be reading this week, mostly about the epistemology and God's existence. You won't really see you will see the distinction between mind and body in there, but the philosophical discussion that comes with that is not going to be unpacked as much right there. That'll come through other philosophical discussions in the history of philosophy. So anyway, that gives you a quick orientation about Descartes. Hope this helps, and I look forward to seeing what you have to say about it in our course.